In a jaw-dropping moment from London's Mayor's Question Time, Sadiq Khan is confronted head-on by Reform UK's Alex Wilson. And what follows is pure political theatre. Pressed on fare evasion, enforcement failures, and the controversial push for road charges, Khan simply refuses to answer, running down the clock in stunned silence. This clip captures the very moment Londoners are beginning to ask, is their mayor even listening anymore? What was supposed to be accountability turned into an uncomfortable display of evasion, arrogance, and total disregard for transparency. Watch the moment Khan is cornered and goes speechless.
If I was to barge through the barriers, I'm not going to, don't worry, but if I was to barge through the barriers, what would actually happen? What would actually happen to me? I know what would happen to me because in a previous answer, you've talked about the 4 E's. You said that the staff are trying to engage. What does that mean? Educate, encourage, and then enforce. Why is enforcement? These are enforcement officers. Why is enforcement supposedly in their job title? Why is that only ever the last resort? I think Londoners will be disappointed that these people are there to enforce, supposedly, and they're not, because that seems to be the lowest priority in those 4 E's that you give them to do.
Time, Chair.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not sure what the question was.
It's just on the cameras. It was the cameras we're covering.
We've reached a tipping point where consultation has replaced consent, and PR spin has replaced accountability. Khan claims to fight for Londoners, but every toll, every ULEZ camera, every new restriction says otherwise. And perhaps most disturbingly, when challenged by the only people who can legally hold him accountable, he refuses to even speak. Is this democracy? Or is this a dictatorship in a suit?
Quite clear, as long as I'm mayor, we will not be introducing paper mile.
And so then you've abandoned your net zero 2030 plan. Is that correct?
No, I'm quite clear. We still have a target to get to net zero by 2030.
So your own net zero 2030 plan, which I have here, says the scale of reductions required in traffic, the 27% that Assemblymember Russell was just talking about, is only possible with some form of road user charging. These are your words. You're the author of this report. And in the next paragraph, it goes on to clarify that means a pay per mile scheme.
I'm quite clear. We will not be doing paper mile as long as I'm mayor, Chair.
But you're also quite clear that you weren't going to expand ULEZ to outer London. You said that in July 2021. Then a few months later, you launched a consultation. And you were quite clear that you weren't going to build any housing on the Greenbelt. And you're now quite clear that you are going to build housing on the Greenbelt. So with the greatest of respect, I think your categorical denials of what you might not do in the future aren't worth much based on your own track record.
Just when you thought Sadiq Khan couldn't be more evasive, he pulls a vanishing act, live in front of the London Assembly. As serious questions pile up about toll roads, paper mile schemes, and an out-of-control net zero agenda, the mayor's latest trick isn't denial, it's silence. Reform UK's Alex Wilson tried to corner him. What happened next? A jaw-dropping moment that's now shaking London's political stage to its core. The people of London watched in disbelief. A mayor, elected to lead and answer to his constituents, stood in the chamber of the London Assembly, and when pressed on critical questions about enforcement, road charges, and the future of London's transport system, he simply refused to answer. No explanations, no accountability, just clock-watching silence. Welcome to the latest political theatre starring Sadiq Khan, the master of dodging, deflecting, and disappearing. In a fiery exchange captured on live broadcast, Reform UK's Alex Wilson, the party's voice on the London Assembly, attempted to get clarity from Khan on why fair enforcement officers seem to be actively discouraged from doing the very job their title promises, enforcing the law. Why, Wilson asked, is enforcement always the last resort? A fair question, especially for Londoners furious about fare evasion on a network funded by their taxes. But instead of engaging, Khan fell eerily silent. The cameras kept rolling. The room waited. No answer came, and it wasn't a one-off. This was during Mayor's Question Time, an event meant to hold the city's most powerful man to account. But instead of transparency, the public witnessed yet another stall tactic. It's a now familiar move from Khan. Run down the clock, offer vague non-answers, or flat out ignore the question. According to Wilson, he's rude when you ask him a question, and now he's not even bothering to answer at all. But that was only Act 1. Next came an even more explosive exchange, this time with Neil Garrett, a Conservative Assembly member who confronted Khan over his contradictory statements on road charging. The mayor declared confidently, "As long as I'm mayor, we will not be introducing paper mile." Sounds reassuring until you read his own report, authored and signed off by Khan himself. which clearly states that hitting the city's extreme net zero 2030 targets would require exactly that kind of road user charge. Caught in a lie, the mayor just talked in circles. Deny, deflect, repeat. Garrett wasn't letting him off the hook. You were quite clear you weren't going to expand ULEZ, and you did. You said no building on the Greenbelt, and now you are. So how can anyone trust your categorical denials? The chamber was stunned. The mayor, once again, had no meaningful response. This is the reality Londoners face. A mayor who says one thing, does another, and then refuses to explain either. But what's even more shocking is how all major parties, except Reform UK, refuse to challenge Khan's insane 2030 net zero deadline. According to Wilson, the entire policy would cost billions, force the city into unnecessary hardship, and punish drivers with endless restrictions and charges. Under Reform UK, Wilson claims things would be different. No more war on drivers, no more fantasy targets, no more pay per mile. Let people live their lives, choose how they travel, and stop trying to micromanage the public into submission. But it gets worse. This time last year, there was no toll on the Blackwall Tunnel, a lifeline for countless Londoners commuting from South East to Central. Now, toll implemented, another tunnel built, that one's tolled too. And where was the mandate for this in Khan's manifesto? Nowhere. It was slipped in without warning, and when a record-breaking petition was submitted by Greenwich residents against these tolls, Khan ignored it outright. Why? Because, as Khan himself says, it's a consultation, not a referendum. Translation: if you don't give him the answer he wants, he'll do what he wants anyway. And what's at stake here isn't just tolls or charges. It's the democratic voice of Londoners being systematically ignored, over and over again. Whether it's ULEZ expansion, attacks on motorists, net zero policies no one voted for, or sneaky road pricing, Sadiq Khan continues to govern with a mix of arrogance and silence. Wilson summed it up best. He was elected, sure. But if he won't answer questions, if he ignores public petitions, if he refuses scrutiny, then what exactly is he doing as mayor? And let's not forget what's coming next. If the 2030 net zero obsession remains in place, it won't stop at tolls or fare dodging. It will lead to full surveillance, restricted driving zones, and a London where your freedom of movement depends on how many carbon credits you've used that week. Sound dystopian? It's already happening. He said it with a straight face. We're not thinking about pay per mile. But Londoners aren't buying it. After ULEZ expansion, secret tolls and broken promises, can we really trust him? Watch Sadiq Khan deny it all, even as his own reports say the opposite.